The world has always been divided, a battleground where the forces of good and evil have clashed for eternity. Yet, what if the lines between these two forces aren't as clear-cut as we believe? Is the battle between angels and demons truly a battle of absolute good versus evil? Or do the very beings we consider pure and righteous harbor darkness within them? This is the story of an eternal war, one that transcends heaven and hell, and challenges everything we thought we knew about right and wrong. In the heart of the celestial realms, high above the mortal world, the angels stand watch over humanity. Their wings shimmer with the light of righteousness, their hearts bound by an oath to protect, to serve, to guide. They are the messengers of hope, the embodiment of purity. They have long held the belief that their cause is just, that the war against the demons, those fallen creatures of chaos and destruction, is the only path to salvation. But even among them, there are whispers of doubt. Gabriel, the archangel and leader of the celestial forces, has long been revered as the beacon of truth. But deep within his soul, a storm brews. He wonders whether the battle they fight is truly the right one. What if the demons aren't the mindless evil they've been taught to fear? What if there's more to the story, a deeper understanding to be uncovered? These thoughts haunt him in the quiet moments of reflection, moments that are becoming harder and harder to ignore. On the other side, in the fiery pits of hell, the demons rage against their eternal imprisonment. The demon lord, Azazel, commands his legions with fury, bound by a thirst for vengeance against the angels who cast them into the abyss. But Azazel too is conflicted. He knows that the hatred he holds is not purely a result of his fall, but rather a consequence of the suffering he endured. Beneath his fiery exterior, there is a yearning for redemption, a glimmer of hope that perhaps there is a way to break the cycle of violence and hatred that has defined both realms. As the two sides prepare for their next clash, an unlikely opportunity arises, an ancient prophecy that speaks of a way to end the war. Not through annihilation, but through understanding and reconciliation. The prophecy speaks of a time when the forces of good and evil must come together to face a greater threat, one that could destroy both worlds. But this prophecy is shrouded in mystery, and neither side is willing to trust the other enough to believe in its truth. The battlefield is set, but the true war is not just one of fire and light, but one of the heart. Can Gabriel, the angel of light, overcome his doubts and see the truth? Can Azazel, the demon of darkness, reconcile with the pain of his past and embrace the possibility of change? As the winds of war begin to stir once more, the fate of both realms hangs in the balance. Will the angels and demons continue their endless struggle, or will they finally realize that the true battle is not against each other, but within themselves? Gabriel stood on the balcony of the celestial palace, looking out at the infinite expanse of the heavens. The light from the eternal flame, which burned bright at the center of the divine realm, bathed the surroundings in a serene glow. But for Gabriel, the light no longer felt as warm as it once had. It was a cold, distant light, an unyielding force that demanded obedience and unwavering loyalty. The battle with the demons had been long and brutal. Thousands of years of warfare, of watching his comrades fall in battle, had begun to wear on Gabriel's spirit. He had always believed in the righteousness of his cause, that the angels fought for the preservation of peace and the salvation of humanity. But now, as he gazed out into the vastness of the celestial expanse, doubts began to creep into his mind. Was their war truly just? Was the constant struggle against the demons the only path to salvation? Or had they, too, fallen into a cycle of hatred that was no different from the very evil they sought to destroy? Gabriel had been raised to believe that angels were perfect beings, pure in heart, untainted by the darkness that clouded the souls of the demons. Yet, as he thought of Azazel, the leader of the demons, something gnawed at him. Was Azazel really the embodiment of evil? Or had he once been something more? Gabriel couldn't shake the memory of their last encounter. How, in the heat of battle, he had seen a flicker of sorrow in Azazel's eyes. It had been so brief, but it had been enough to leave Gabriel unsettled. The angels had always viewed their mission as clear: fight the demons, destroy them, and bring peace to the world. But Gabriel's heart had begun to question whether that goal was truly in the service of peace. The more he pondered the nature of the demons, the more he wondered if the lines between good and evil were as rigid as the Council of Elders insisted. Was there room for mercy, for understanding, in the eternal struggle between light and dark? As Gabriel's thoughts deepened, his attention shifted to the voice behind him, a figure clad in white robes, the wings of an angel stretched wide, approached with the grace of one who had long since mastered the art of silence. It was Michael, Gabriel's closest confidant and fellow archangel. "Gabriel," Michael said softly, his voice carrying a note of concern. "You've been here for hours. The council is waiting for you. The time has come to discuss the next phase of the war." Gabriel sighed, turning to face his brother. Michael's face was as stoic as ever, his features sharp and noble. There was no sign of the doubts that plagued Gabriel's mind on Michael's face. But Gabriel had always known that Michael wore his faith in the war like a suit of armor, impenetrable and unshakable. "I know," Gabriel replied, his voice tinged with weariness. "But I can't help but wonder if we're doing the right thing. Michael, I've been thinking, what if we're wrong? What if the demons are not the true enemy? What if the real battle is not against them, but within ourselves?" Michael's expression hardened, his eyes narrowing in confusion. "What are you saying? The demons are the embodiment of evil. Gabriel, they've fought us for centuries, spreading chaos and destruction wherever they go. There is no question that they must be defeated." Gabriel shook his head slowly, his gaze distant. "But what if they were not always like this? What if, like us, they once had a purpose, a reason to fight? What if the war we've been waging is not one of righteousness, but of blind vengeance?" Michael took a step closer, his voice firm, though a hint of sadness lingered. "You've always been the beacon of light for us. Gabriel, you've always shown us the way forward. But this doubt you're feeling is dangerous. The demons are our enemies. We cannot let their darkness taint our purpose. The council's decision is final. The war must continue." Gabriel felt a pang in his chest at Michael's words. He had always admired his brother's unyielding faith, his conviction that the angels were the light in a world consumed by darkness. But now, for the first time, Gabriel felt as if that faith was suffocating him. He couldn't ignore the gnawing sensation that something was wrong, that perhaps there was more to this war than simply defeating the demons. "I don't know if I can continue down this path," Gabriel whispered, almost to himself. "I don't know if I can keep fighting when I'm not sure what we're fighting for anymore." Michael's gaze softened, though his expression remained serious. "You've always believed in the righteousness of our cause. Gabriel, that belief is what makes you a leader. But if you're questioning that, then perhaps you need to take a step back and find the answers within yourself. The war will go on, but your journey, your inner journey, must be your own." As Gabriel looked into Michael's eyes, he felt a deep sense of conflict. His heart yearned for clarity, for the truth of the matter, but the path ahead seemed shrouded in darkness, and for the first time, he wondered if the very truth he sought might be hidden somewhere within the enemy he had sworn to destroy. Meanwhile, in the infernal depths of the underworld, Azazel sat upon his obsidian throne, his fiery eyes gazing into the swirling abyss before him. The sound of crackling flames filled the air, but even that could not drown out the noise in his mind. The war with the angels had always been one of destruction, but recently, something had shifted within him. The fire of hatred that had once fueled him now seemed dull and distant. His thoughts wandered to a time before his fall, a time when he had believed in something greater than the power he now wielded. Azazel had not always been a demon. Once, he had been one of the most revered archangels, a being of immense power and wisdom, but pride and a desire for autonomy had led him down a darker path. His rebellion had cost him everything: his wings, his place in the heavens, and the trust of his fellow angels. But as the years passed, Azazel began to question whether his fall had truly been a mistake. Had he been punished for seeking freedom, for desiring change in a world that demanded perfection? In the silence of his throne room, Azazel's thoughts turned to Gabriel. The angel had always been his opposite, his foil in the eternal struggle. But in their last battle, Azazel had seen something in Gabriel's eyes, something that he had not expected. Doubt, a flicker of uncertainty that mirrored his own. Could it be that Gabriel was questioning their war as well? Was it possible that the two of them were not so different after all? As Azazel pondered these thoughts, he knew that the next battle was fast approaching. The angels would come for him again, as they always did, but this time, something inside him had changed. He was no longer sure of the path he had walked for so long. and though he could never reveal this weakness to his fellow demons, a part of him wondered if there might be another way, a way that did not involve the destruction of everything he had once known. The days following Gabriel's conversation with Michael felt like an eternity. His mind was a battleground, as restless as the realms in which he resided. Each time he stood before the Celestial Council, ready to give orders for the next strike against the demons, a heavy weight settled on his chest. He could not shake the feeling that there was more to the conflict than simply defending the mortal world. Something was wrong, but Gabriel could not yet see what. The council had made it clear, another assault on the demon stronghold was imminent. Gabriel's role was as it had always been, lead the angels to victory, crush the forces of darkness, and restore balance. But every time he prepared for battle, his thoughts drifted back to Azazel. What if Azazel, the leader of the demons, had once been like him, a fallen angel, cast out not for evil, but for defying a system that demanded conformity? Could they truly be so different? These questions plagued Gabriel's thoughts as he paced the halls of the celestial palace. His mind, usually sharp and resolute, had become clouded. He sought the guidance of the elders, the wisest of angels, but even their advice seemed to fall flat, unable to ease his growing discomfort. On the other side, in the depths of the infernal realms, Azazel was grappling with his own uncertainties. The war had always been his purpose, the driving force behind everything he had become. But the more he looked upon the shattered world of hell, the more he felt the weight of his actions, his fall, his rebellion, the destruction he had wrought. The demons had once been creatures of beauty, of strength and purpose. But over time, the corruption of their imprisonment had turned them into something darker. Azazel had become their leader, but as he sat in the infernal throne room, he wondered if he had truly been the right choice. He had led them through countless battles, but at what cost? The suffering he had witnessed, the pain in the eyes of his own kind, had begun to eat away at him. He thought of Gabriel again. The angel had always been his equal, his mirror image in many ways. Their battles had always been a struggle for dominance, for the survival of their respective races. But this time, as Azazel had prepared for war, something had shifted within him. He could no longer view Gabriel merely as an enemy. The flicker of doubt in Gabriel's eyes, the brief moment of shared sorrow, they were not the signs of weakness that he had once believed. They were a sign of something deeper, a connection between them that neither of them had fully understood. Azazel had always been taught that the angels were the enemy, that their purity was a facade, hiding a deep, self-righteous arrogance. But in the quiet moments when he reflected on the past, he realized that his own fall had been the result of his desire for freedom. Had he truly fallen into darkness? Or had he simply refused to accept a world that forced him to conform to ideals that no longer made sense? The more Azazel thought about it, the more he felt that he and Gabriel were not so different after all. They were both bound by their duties, their destinies as leaders of their respective races. But what if those destinies were not set in stone? What if there was another way, a way to break the cycle of violence and destruction that had defined their lives for so long? His thoughts were interrupted by the sudden arrival of his lieutenant, Lilith. Her wings, once pure and white, were now stained by the fires of hell, and her eyes glowed with the fire of rebellion. She approached Azazel cautiously, knowing the leader of the demons had been unusually quiet in recent days. "Azazel," Lilith said, her voice low and measured, "the council has sent word. The angels are preparing for another attack. They will be here soon." Azazel nodded, but his heart was not in it. "I know, but this time, I don't think I can fight the way I have before." Lilith raised an eyebrow, surprise evident in her voice. "What are you saying? The angels have shown no mercy. They will destroy us if we don't stop them." Azazel turned to her, his gaze intense. "What if they are not the true enemy? Lilith, what if the battle we've been fighting, this endless war, is not the answer? I have seen something in Gabriel's eyes, something that tells me he feels the same way. What if we've been wrong all along?" Lilith's expression faltered for a moment, her fiery resolve challenged by the weight of Azazel's words. You're not serious. Are you? Azazel, we are demons. Our very existence is a rebellion against the angels. You can't seriously think we can end this war just like that. "I don't know," Azazel said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "But I need to find out. I need to understand if there is a way to break the cycle, to stop the destruction that both sides have wrought. I can't keep fighting mindlessly, without knowing if there's another way." Lilith remained silent, her gaze fixed on Azazel as she considered his words. "What do you want to do?" she asked, her voice laced with both suspicion and curiosity. Azazel looked up, his eyes burning with a new resolve. "I want to speak to Gabriel. I want to hear what he has to say. Perhaps, together, we can find a solution that doesn't involve annihilating each other." Lilith shook her head. "You're asking for the impossible. Gabriel would never agree to peace with us. He is too bound by his duty." "I know," Azazel said, his voice tinged with regret. "But if we don't try, we will never know, and I can't live with that." As Azazel spoke, he could feel the weight of his decision pressing down on him. His entire existence had been defined by the war, by the struggle against the angels. But now, in the quiet moments of reflection, he realized that he was fighting for something greater than just survival. He was fighting for a chance at redemption, for himself, for his people, and perhaps even for Gabriel. Gabriel sat in the war council chamber, the air heavy with anticipation. His brothers and sisters stood around him, each of them with the same unwavering resolve in their eyes, ready for the battle that was to come. The war against the demons had been endless. But today, something was different. Gabriel could feel it, the weight of his doubts, his inner conflict, seemed to hang in the air like a storm waiting to break. The council had decided that the next strike would be decisive. They would target the heart of the demon stronghold, the very place where Azazel's power emanated. The objective was clear: end the war once and for all. The demons would either be defeated, or they would be wiped out completely. There was no room for negotiation. Gabriel had always accepted this as the way of things. But now, with every passing moment, the certainty in his heart waned. He looked to Michael, who stood by his side, the unshakable rock upon which the heavenly host relied. "Gabriel," Michael said, his voice firm but with a hint of concern, "you've been distant these past few days. The council's decision is final. We will crush the demons, and peace will return." Gabriel nodded, but his mind was not there. His gaze was distant, his thoughts elsewhere. "I know," he murmured, though it was clear he was not convinced. Michael's expression softened, though his voice remained resolute. "I know this war has taken a toll on you, Gabriel, but we cannot allow doubt to cloud our judgment. This is the only way to restore balance." "I don't know if that's true," Gabriel said quietly, his voice heavy with the burden of his thoughts. "What if we've been wrong all along? What if there's another way? What if we're just as blind as the demons we fight against?" Michael's face faltered for a moment. He had always known Gabriel to be a leader who inspired with unwavering certainty. To see him question everything now was a shock. "Gabriel," Michael began, his voice strained with the weight of responsibility, "you've always believed in the righteousness of our cause. You've led us through countless battles. But if you're uncertain, if you doubt what we're doing, then what does that mean for all of us?" Gabriel's eyes met Michael's, and for a moment, it was as if time stood still. He could see the pain in his brother's gaze, the struggle between loyalty and his own fear of losing faith in the cause. Gabriel felt a deep sense of guilt, but he couldn't shake the nagging voice inside him that told him they were walking down a path that could lead to destruction. Meanwhile, in the depths of the underworld, Azazel stood before a mirror of fire, his reflection flickering in the molten depths. He had been preparing for war once more, sharpening his weapons, gathering his demons for the final confrontation. But something in his heart told him that this time, it would not be the same. Azazel had been the leader of the demons for centuries, a figure of fire and fury, a symbol of rebellion and defiance. But now, the fire inside him burned differently. It was no longer the flame of rage that fueled him, it was the quiet fire of doubt. He had thought about Gabriel constantly in the days leading up to the battle. Their rivalry, their animosity, it had been the very foundation of their existence for so long. But what if that was all it was? Just a cycle of hate and war that would never end unless someone broke it? Azazel turned away from the mirror, his dark wings stretching as he paced the obsidian floor of his throne room. Lilith had been quiet lately, observing him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. She, too, could sense that something was changing within him. "Azazel," Lilith's voice called, breaking the silence. "Are you ready? The battle will be upon us soon." Azazel didn't respond immediately. He was lost in thought, wondering if he was making a mistake. Could he really face Gabriel in battle again? Could he continue to lead his people down a path of destruction when, deep down, he knew there had to be another way? I'm not sure, Azazel said finally, his voice almost a whisper. I'm not sure we should fight anymore. Lilith raised an eyebrow, her expression one of disbelief. What are you saying? After everything, you're telling me you want to stop? You've led us through every battle. You've always fought with conviction. What's changed? Azazel turned to her, his eyes filled with a mix of sadness and resolve. What if we've been wrong? What if this war is pointless? What if we can find peace? Not through victory, but through understanding? Lilith's face softened, though her tone remained skeptical. You've lost your mind. Peace with the angels? After all they've done, they want to destroy us. Azazel, they've been at war with us for eternity. Do you think they'll ever accept us as equals? I don't know, Azazel replied, his voice tinged with uncertainty. But I can't keep fighting like this. There has to be another way. Maybe Gabriel feels the same. He's not the same as the others. I've seen something in his eyes. Something that says he's questioning everything. Too. Lilith frowned, her expression darkening. You're willing to risk everything for a chance at peace? We've been fighting for so long. Azazel, this is who we are. We are demons, and we fight. I know, Azazel said, his voice soft, but I'm not sure that fighting is the answer anymore. If Gabriel and I can find a way to end this, without bloodshed, without further destruction, then maybe it's worth the risk. Lilith did not respond immediately, but the uncertainty in her eyes showed that even she was beginning to doubt. Azazel had always been their leader, the one who held them together. But now, as the war loomed closer, she could see that he was no longer the same. The fire that had once burned so brightly in him now flickered weakly. And she wondered if it was a sign of weakness, or a sign of something deeper, something that could change everything. Back in the Celestial Palace, Gabriel had made a decision. He could no longer remain passive in the face of his doubts. He would meet Azazel, he would find a way to speak to him, to understand what was behind the animosity, to see if there was any chance, however slim, for peace between them. The battle would still come, and Gabriel knew he couldn't avoid it forever. But maybe, just maybe, there was another way to end this cycle of hatred. The hours stretched long, and the weight of impending war loomed over both the Celestial Palace and the infernal realms. Gabriel stood alone in his chamber, the soft glow of celestial light casting long shadows on the floor. His mind was elsewhere, swirling with thoughts of Azazel, the battle, and the future of their kind. The decision he had made to seek peace had not been an easy one. It was a gamble, a risk that could very well end in failure, but it was a risk he was willing to take. Outside, the sounds of preparation were unmistakable. The angels were readying their weapons, sharpening their blades, and preparing for the assault on the demon stronghold. Gabriel could feel the vibrations of their movements in the very walls of the palace. But in the depths of his soul, he felt something else, a yearning for something more than just victory. What if there was a way to stop this endless cycle of destruction? To find a path that was neither angelic nor demonic, but purely their own? His thoughts were interrupted by a quiet knock at the door. Gabriel turned, his heart quickening, but he already knew who it was. Enter, he called softly. The door opened, revealing Michael standing in the doorway. His expression was unreadable, though there was a certain tension in his posture. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him, and Gabriel could see the weight of the world in his brother's eyes. You've made your decision then, Michael said, his voice calm but heavy with concern. You will seek out Azazel. Gabriel nodded. Yes, it's the only way to know the truth. I have to try. Michael, I can't stand by and lead this war without understanding why we're fighting. Michael didn't respond immediately. He simply stood there, watching his brother, the angel who had once been a symbol of unwavering righteousness, now uncertain, questioning everything. It was a look that Michael had never seen before, and it shook him to his core. Gabriel, Michael finally said, I understand your doubts, but you cannot trust Azazel. He is the enemy. He is the one who has led his kind to war, and he will never change. You know that. I don't know that, Gabriel replied softly. What if he's just like us? What if he's been fighting out of the same sense of duty? Out of the same sense of loss? Maybe we're both victims of a war that was never meant to happen. Michael's expression tightened. You're wrong. Azazel is the embodiment of everything we stand against. He betrayed us, and now he leads the demons in their eternal rebellion. He cannot be reasoned with. Then we are no better than him, Gabriel said, his voice firm now. If we refuse to even listen, refuse to even try, then we're no different from the demons we fight against. And I won't be a part of that. I will meet him, and I will hear what he has to say. Michael stepped forward, his wings flaring with the intensity of his emotions. Gabriel, you're making a mistake. If you do this, you may very well lose everything, your position, your purpose. This war is all we have left. Gabriel's gaze softened. I don't believe that anymore. This war may be all we have left, but it's not all we are. I still believe in the light, Michael, but I believe it can be found even in the darkness. The room fell silent as the two brothers stood there, facing each other. Gabriel could see the pain in Michael's eyes, the fear of losing him. The fear of what would happen if Gabriel chose this path. It was the same fear that had been in his own heart for so long. But now, there was a clarity that had never been there before. He could no longer ignore it. The truth, whatever it might be, had to be discovered, and he would not find it without facing Azazel. I have to do this, Gabriel said finally, his voice resolute. Michael's face softened, a mixture of sadness and understanding washing over him. I can't stop you, Gabriel, but know this, you will always have my support. Even if you walk away from this war, you will always be my brother. Gabriel's heart tightened. He knew the risks of what he was doing, but in his soul, he knew it was the only path that could end this conflict. Thank you, Michael. As Gabriel left the room, he felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. He knew that what he was about to do could change the course of history, perhaps even the fate of both angels and demons. He was prepared to face Azazel, to see if there was truly a way to find peace. But there was still a nagging feeling in the back of his mind. What if this meeting was a trap? What if Azazel had only been pretending all along, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? The uncertainty gnawed at him, but he could not turn back now. He had made his choice, and now he would follow through with it. Meanwhile, in the depths of the underworld, Azazel prepared for the same meeting. He had sent word to Gabriel, telling him to meet at the border of the realms, the place where the light of heaven met the darkness of hell. It was a neutral ground, a place where neither side had dominion. It was their only chance to speak without the constant weight of their roles and the expectations of their people bearing down on them. As Azazel stood at the border, his mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The moment of truth was upon him. He had always known that the demons would not understand, that Lilith and the others would see his actions as a betrayal. But he could no longer ignore the truth that had been eating away at him for so long. The war, the endless destruction, it had to stop. But could Gabriel see that? Could he understand the pain behind Azazel's actions? Or was this meeting destined to end in violence, as it always had? Azazel stared into the distance, waiting for Gabriel to arrive. His wings, dark as the night sky, fluttered restlessly. He could feel the weight of history pressing on him, the pressure of everything that had come before. But now, he was no longer just the leader of the demons. Now, he was a being caught between two worlds, desperately trying to find a way out. As he waited, the air around him grew heavy. He could sense Gabriel's approach long before he saw him. The energy of the angel was unmistakable, a light that shone even in the darkest places. Gabriel was coming, and Azazel's heart raced with anticipation. This was the moment. Everything had led to this point. Whatever happened next would change everything. The boundary between heaven and hell was not just a physical space, but a place of raw, untamed energy, a liminal space where light and darkness met and clashed. Never fully blending but never entirely apart. It was here that Gabriel had agreed to meet Azazel. The air shimmered with a strange, palpable tension as the two forces, the celestial and the infernal, seemed to hold their breath. Gabriel's wings fluttered as he crossed the threshold, stepping into the realm of shadows. He could feel the temperature drop, the air thick with the scent of sulfur and brimstone. The ground beneath his feet was rough and jagged, a stark contrast to the smooth, ethereal landscapes of heaven. Still, Gabriel moved forward, his resolve firm, his heart racing with anticipation. He knew that this meeting could be the end of everything he had ever known. If Azazel saw this as a betrayal, if he viewed Gabriel's doubts as weakness, the consequences could be catastrophic. But Gabriel also understood that if there was any chance at peace, it had to start here, between the two of them, away from the influence of their armies and the weight of their positions. The truth, whatever it was, had to be sought in the quiet between them. Azazel stood in the distance, his dark wings spread wide, a figure of fire and shadow, the very embodiment of rebellion. His eyes locked onto Gabriel as the angel approached, his expression unreadable. Gabriel could see the faint flicker of doubt in Azazel's gaze, a crack in the otherwise unyielding exterior. The demon lord was not the same as he had been before. Gabriel could feel it. The two stood across from each other, the space between them filled with the weight of 1,000 years of conflict. Silence hung heavily in the air before Azazel finally spoke, his voice deep and tinged with weariness. "So, you came," Azazel said, his tone steady but not without a trace of something else, something Gabriel could not quite place. "I wondered if you would. After everything, I thought you might let this war continue. But here you are." Gabriel took a deep breath, his wings folding gently behind him as he met Azazel's gaze. "I had to. I couldn't keep fighting without knowing why, without knowing if there was any other way. I don't want to be a part of this endless cycle of destruction. Azazel, I want to understand you. Understand why we're still at war." Azazel's lips curled into a bitter smile. "Understand me? You want to understand the demons? After everything we've done to each other?" Gabriel's voice softened. "I know we've fought. I know there's been pain and suffering on both sides. But I don't believe this is the way it has to be. Maybe we've been wrong all along. Maybe we've both been manipulated into this war, thinking it's the only path." Azazel's expression faltered for a moment, and Gabriel could see the internal struggle in his eyes. "You think I've been manipulated? You think I haven't made my own choices? Every action I've taken has been for a reason. Gabriel, we demons don't need angels to tell us what's right and wrong." "I'm not telling you what's right or wrong," Gabriel responded, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'm asking you to look at everything we've lost, everything we've done. Haven't we both been blinded by our roles in this war? Haven't we both been trapped in a cycle that we've never questioned?" Azazel took a step forward, his voice hardening. "You talk about questioning, Gabriel, but I've seen what happens when we try to change things. I've seen what happens when we let our guard down. Look at our world. Look at the suffering we've caused. The demons, they're the ones who suffer most. And now you want to throw all of that away for some ideal of peace? I don't believe in peace. I never have." Gabriel's eyes softened. "I didn't always believe in peace either. But I've seen enough to know that we can't keep doing this. I've seen how this war has torn us both apart, how it's torn our people apart. And I don't want to be a part of it anymore. I want to end it. If you'll let me." Azazel looked away, his gaze clouded with a mixture of anger and uncertainty. The flames in his eyes flickered, a sign of the conflict brewing within him. Gabriel could see that the demon lord was no longer the same as he had been. The certainty that once defined him was now replaced with a deep, raw vulnerability. It was a side of Azazel that Gabriel had never seen before. "I can't just let go of everything. Gabriel," Azazel said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I've built this rebellion from the ground up. I've watched my people suffer. I've seen my comrades fall in battle, fighting for what we believe in. I can't throw all of that away. I can't just forgive." Gabriel stepped closer, his voice filled with compassion. "I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to look beyond the anger, beyond the hatred, and see the possibility of something more, something better. We don't have to keep fighting. Azazel, we can find a way to end this." Azazel closed his eyes for a moment, as though he were fighting an internal battle that raged as fiercely as any war. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, he looked at Gabriel again, his expression conflicted. "You don't understand," Azazel said, his voice barely audible. "If I let go of this war, if I let go of everything I've fought for, who am I then? What am I?" Gabriel's heart ached for him. "You're Azazel, the one who once stood for something more, the one who led his people with strength, even when it seemed like there was no hope. You're not just a warrior. You're more than that. You don't have to define yourself by this war." Azazel's wings trembled, the tips flickering with the faintest hint of light. "And what about you? What happens to you, Gabriel, when you choose to walk away from everything you've ever known? When you stop fighting for the angels?" Gabriel met Azazel's gaze, his voice firm but compassionate. I'll fight for something greater. I'll fight for peace, for understanding, for something beyond this endless war. The two stood there, their eyes locked in a moment of shared understanding. A fragile connection formed between them despite the gulf that had once separated them. The weight of their choices pressed down on them both. But for the first time, there was no immediate violence in the air, no battle to be fought. But there was still one question left, one question that neither of them had the answer to yet. Could they truly let go of everything they had known, everything they had fought for, to find a new path? Or was the cycle of war too ingrained in their hearts, too deeply a part of their existence, to ever truly break? The air between Gabriel and Azazel was thick with uncertainty. Their wings, so starkly different in hue and shape, now stood as silent witnesses to the tense silence that enveloped them. Both had spent lifetimes locked in an eternal battle, each convinced that their cause was just, that their side was right. Yet now, in this fleeting moment, they were standing at the precipice of something unimaginable, a possibility of change, of peace. But was it truly possible? Or was it just an illusion, a fleeting hope that would shatter the moment it was touched? Gabriel took a deep breath, his heart heavy with the weight of what was at stake. Azazel, he began, his voice calm but carrying the depth of all the years he had lived. This war, this endless cycle of pain, it has to stop. I know it won't be easy, but we have to find a way to move forward. We can't keep killing each other. We've both lost too much already. Azazel's gaze softened, but his jaw clenched as though he was holding on to something much deeper within him. You speak of peace, Gabriel, but you don't understand what peace costs. It's not just about stopping the fighting, it's about understanding the weight of what's been done. The demons, my people, they've bled for this cause. They've given everything for this war. And you think we can just forgive? I don't know, Gabriel said, stepping closer, his voice filled with quiet empathy. I don't know if we can forgive. But we have to try. We can't keep going down this path of destruction. Maybe it's time to create something new. A future where we don't have to be enemies anymore. Azazel shook his head, looking away for a moment, his wings fluttering in agitation. You think it's that simple? That we can just put down our arms and everything will be all right? It's not that easy. If I end this war, if I let go of everything I've built, what does that make me? What do I stand for? Gabriel? Gabriel's voice was gentle but unwavering. You stand for something greater. You stand for freedom, for choice, for your people, but that doesn't mean it has to come at the cost of others. The demons have been oppressed. Yes, but the angels have suffered too. We're not so different. Azazel, our people both need hope. We need a future where we don't define ourselves by hatred, by violence. For a long moment, Azazel was silent. His gaze drifted to the horizon, to the place where light met darkness. The realm between heaven and hell seemed to shimmer, as if it too was caught between two opposing forces, unsure of which way it should tilt. You speak of hope, Azazel said quietly, his voice cracking ever so slightly. But how do we hope when all we've known is war? When all we've seen is destruction? Where do we find that hope? Gabriel? Gabriel's heart ached for the demon lord standing before him. For the first time, he saw not just an adversary, but a being who had been broken by the very conflict that had consumed them both. He saw a warrior who, deep down, longed for something more than the endless bloodshed. You find hope in the choice to change, Gabriel replied, his voice steady. It's not about forgetting the past. It's about choosing not to be defined by it. We can't undo what's been done, but we can choose to stop it from continuing. It starts with us, here, today. If we can find a way to end this war, then maybe our people will see that it's possible. Maybe we can show them that there's another way. Azazel's wings trembled once more, his eyes flickering with a mix of disbelief and longing. And what if they don't see it that way? What if they see us as traitors, as cowards for giving up the fight? Gabriel stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. Then we will show them with our actions. We don't need to win this fight with weapons or force. We need to win it with compassion, with understanding. The true battle, Azazel, is not fought with swords or fire. It's fought in the hearts of those who choose to believe in something greater than themselves. The silence stretched long between them, both of them locked in a moment of reflection. And in that silence, something began to shift. The weight of years of conflict, of endless fighting, slowly began to lift. Azazel looked at Gabriel, his dark eyes no longer filled with hatred, but with a glimmer of something new, uncertainty. Yes, but also the faintest trace of hope. You want peace, Azazel said, his voice low and uncertain. But you can't have peace without sacrifice. You can't have peace without the willingness to let go of everything you thought you knew. Gabriel nodded. I'm willing to sacrifice. I've seen too much to keep going like this. We both have. Azazel hesitated for a moment, then looked up at the sky, his wings unfurling as if ready to take flight. I don't know if I can ever fully let go. Gabriel, I don't know if the demons will follow me. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's time to try something different. The two stood there, at the crossroads between light and dark, each facing a future they had never imagined. It was a future where the path was uncertain, where the cost of peace was yet to be seen. But in that moment, they both knew that they had chosen something greater than themselves, a possibility for a future that transcended the endless cycle of war. As the first rays of light began to break through the darkness, the world around them seemed to shift. The sky above them began to brighten, not with the brilliance of heaven's light, but with the warmth of something new, something neither celestial nor infernal, but human. For the first time in millennia, there was the faintest trace of hope, a hope that peace could be possible. But the road ahead would not be easy. There would be resistance. There would be those who refused to let go of the old ways, those who clung to the idea of battle and bloodshed. But Gabriel and Azazel had made their choice. They would walk this path together, knowing that the true victory was not in conquering, but in the courage to change, to believe that peace was worth the sacrifice. As they turned to face the horizon, their wings stretching wide, the first steps toward a new dawn had been taken. The eternal battle was not over, but for the first time, it was no longer defined by war. It was defined by the possibility of redemption, of healing, and of a future that could be better than the past. And that, in the end, was the most powerful choice of all.